Stay with me. By the end of this video, you will be able to spot the 4 switches that turn a tenderness practice into a border patrol. 1. From suffering to innocence. 2. From ethics to purity. 3. From refuge to territory. 4. From compassion to permission. I'm not here to sneer at devotion or to flatten histories. I am here to trace the wiring that lets a word like loving kindness become a loud hailer for fear while still sounding holy. That wiring is old, efficient, and insultingly reusable. It has nothing to do with your grandmother's altar and everything to do with power discovering the perfect fragrance. You came for a yes, no. Is Buddhist nationalism a betrayal or a legitimate defense? Wrong question. The better one is tactical. Which parts of Dharma must be edited, muted, or upscaled to let a nation-state wear compassion like a uniform? Answer that, and you can see the process wherever it hides, on billboards, in comment sections, in school books, in the way grandparents tell bedtime stories with maps in them. The edits are predictable. Selective scripture, emphasize order, minimize interdependence, sacred geography, monasteries become border stones, and the eternal marketing move, suffering as brand identity. We suffer more, therefore we deserve more. The seduction works because it offers clean feelings to messy lives. It replaces the ache of shared fragility with the thrill of chosen weakness. Our tears are noble, their tears are tactics. It takes the most humane sentence in Buddhism. Just like me, this person wants to be free from suffering and inserts a border. This person becomes our people. From there, cruelty can speak in a soothing register. A curfew becomes compassion for the many. A rumor becomes karma, catching up with the guilty. Silence becomes wisdom. I'm not asking you to stop loving your language, foods, festivals, or dead. I'm asking you to watch the moment admiration becomes acreage. That's when shrines turn into outposts, pilgrims into patrols, and elders into endorsements. Spend 12 minutes with me, and you will leave with a map of those hinges, the speeches that switch pronouns, the posters that switch verbs, the sermons that switch targets. If the story you consume makes compassion cheaper, the further from your village it travels, you're not hearing Dharma, you're hearing distribution. Here's what you will leave with, and I am willing to put a wager on it. You will know how to freeze frame any patriotic sermon and circle the switch, the single sentence where compassion is quietly reassigned from beings to a brand. You will know the 4 stock shots that always precede a hard sell: elder's hand on a child's head, flag rising behind a statue, aerials of a sea of candles, a slow pan across names of the dead. And you will know what is missing from each frame, the living whose names do not fit the melody. You will also know where to listen, not for the word love, which is cheap, but for the word order, which is where love goes when it wants a uniform. Do not mistake my tone for cynicism. I am making room for a better devotion, one that can love a place the way a gardener loves soil, with compost and critique. The version I will denounce tonight loves a place the way a collector loves a trophy case: polished, guarded, admired, and fundamentally lonely. If you want a fair test for your own heart, try this. Imagine a stranger's baby wearing your nation's colors. Does your chest soften because a child is a child, or harden because a color is a color? That answer is your curriculum. And yes, you will hear sentences you can repeat the next time someone tries to hang a policy on a prayer. Not slogans, questions. The most dangerous thing in a nationalist project is not a protest. It is a question that refuses to blink. Tonight, you will collect a handful of those. Keep them. Use them gently. They are the Dharma's ancient gift to people who don't want to be tricked by beauty. Every nationalist theology needs a recipe simple enough to repeat at rallies and strong enough to explain away bruises. The first ingredient is piety as identity, not practice, not conduct, identity. You are named by the robe on the poster, the relic in the parade, the calendar of days off. This frames doubt as treason and curiosity as foreign influence. The second ingredient is sacred geography. Landscapes become shrines, river bends become proofs, mountains become bulwarks. A temple on a hill is rebranded as a fort that politely refuses the name. The third is sentimental scarcity. Compassion is a precious liquid, and we only have enough for those who sound like us when they cry. Third ingredient, curated scripture. Universal compassion is wallpaper, order is the furniture. Stories that celebrate renunciation get retold as stories that reward obedience. Mirrors become windows. Look into your mind becomes look at their threat. Fourth, martyr math. A century of pains is kneaded into a daily loaf. This doesn't require falsifying history. It requires temporal zoom. Highlight our scars, blur our claws. Trauma becomes destiny, and destiny becomes policy. Fifth, purity, economy, food, dress, marriage, music, each becomes a referendum. Your lunch is now a vote, your daughter's playlist, a border skirmish. Then, the enzymatic part, security theatre. Uniforms borrow the cadence of chanting, announcements borrow the melody of sutras, curfews learn to sound like blessings. Protect the sacred becomes an umbrella under which anything fits: zoning, censorship, paramilitary cosplay. The sixth ingredient is the most cowardly, the cute exception. The sermon ends with a universal tender phrase, "May all beings be safe," then adds an unspoken footnote that attaches safety to loyalty. Loyalty to whom? To the party, to the donors, to the myth. If you want a smell test, use pronouns and verbs. When we becomes morally singular and they becomes metaphysically simple, a holy machine is warming up. When verbs shift from seeing and learning to purifying and defending, you're no longer in religion. You're in a franchise with incense. The machine is fascinating because it works on the same neural circuits as devotion, salience, rhythm, belonging, relief. That's why it sells. That's why it scales. And that's why, unless we name the recipe, it'll keep cooking us. Add the seventh ingredient, grandmother law. Bedtime stories become border management systems, golden ages with simple villains, saints who never doubted, wars that were always defensive, migrations that were always invasions. Children memorize emotion as evidence. Later, no statistic can compete. Eighth, calendar capture. Public holidays are sequenced to sustain arousal. Grief Day, Vow Day, Victory Day. Each festival adds one more turn of the screw between we and the rest. Ninth, uniform caretaking, relief drives, soup kitchens, flood brigades, good work in good jackets, taught to see need as brand touchpoints. Aid is filmed as if compassion were a product launch. 10th, legal incense. Soft words become hard code. Zoning, citizenship tiers, speech laws structured to keep the majority's feelings holy and minorities' feelings hypothetical. 11th, neighborhood watch with prayer beads. Piety legitimizes surveillance. Rumor work becomes a form of devotion. The camera becomes an altar. 12th, diaspora dial-up. Exiles wire money to buy back innocence. Politicians learn to speak to two rooms at once, the town square and the overseas feed. 13th, veto by offense. Any policy you dislike is renamed an insult to ancestors. Any inquiry into budgets is renamed hatred of culture. 14th, theology of fatigue. We tried peace. 15th, the grace note. Every rally closes with a universal wish, so the footage travels well. Export grade tenderness, domestically restricted. You can cook this recipe anywhere. You can also refuse it by refusing to pretend that purity is the same as safety, that silence is the same as harmony, that loyalty is the same as love. Recipes lose power the moment we publish them. That's why movements hate manuals. Consider this the manual they didn't want you to read. Nationalist Buddhism never says we don't care. It says we care first. It doesn't reject compassion. It prioritizes it, moving it from an ontological default to a strategic resource. The move is subtle. Precepts get reinterpreted as contextual, where context means ethnicity, majority status, historic injury. Nonviolence becomes non-aggression, a lawyerly phrase with loopholes big enough for a convoy. The doctrine of karma is recruited to do triage. The suffering of outsiders is regrettable, but explained. The suffering of insiders is sacred and immediate. Right here, Dharma slides into deontology cosplay. Instead of asking what reduces harm, the conversation asks what preserves identity. The shift is elegant because it feels clean. It replaces the messy arithmetic of compassion with a purity test you can pass by attire, accent, and allegiance. Then it props the test up with a debt ledger. You owe ancestors, martyrs, monuments. The debt is never payable, which is the point. It keeps you obedient without ever being collected. The rhetoric is anesthetized. You won't hear hate, you'll hear hygiene. You won't hear remove them, you'll hear restore balance. A riot will be a reaction. A purge will be a cleanup. A prison will be a protective custody. The goal is to launder intent until even participants can claim calm hearts. If someone objects, the counterpunch is therapeutic. Don't be reactive, be mindful. In other words, practice composure while we practice policy. The more meditative the tone, the sharper the knife hidden inside it. Two other doctrines get twisted. Right speech is folded into national harmony, meaning silence around the powerful and surveillance of the weak. Right livelihood mutates into loyal livelihood. Work that feeds the machine is service. Work that feeds the wrong mouths is decadence. In schools, loving kindness meditations are reworded in the plural possessive. May our soldiers be safe. May our mothers be happy. Kids learn to feel warmth on a leash. The circle closes where the map ends. How does the karma twist actually land in a living room? A neighbor's misfortune becomes a morality tale. A closed shop is explained as cosmic bookkeeping. An attack is framed as inevitable lessons for people who refused harmony. The beauty of karma as personal responsibility, liberating when aimed inward, gets refitted as a spectator sport when aimed outward. It anesthetizes pity and makes distance feel like truth. You don't have to hate anyone. You only have to trust the universe to hate on your behalf. The precept against intoxicants finds new use as culture patrol. Their music is decadent, their food polluting, their dress aggressive. Meanwhile, the intoxicants of power, uniforms, parades, exemptions, never make the list. Texts about loving kindness are edited as loyalty scripts. May all beings be happy becomes a seasonal slogan printed on banners at events where all means all of us. Even emptiness gets conscripted. If nothing has inherent self, then no harm can truly be done. Pain becomes illusory, except when it's ours, in which case it is evidence. In courts and councils, the tone remains even. Violence speaks the language of paperwork. Dispossession travels as a PDF. A grandmother who protests is reminded to be mindful. A monk who objects is told he doesn't understand the situation. The miracle of meditation, making space between impulse and act, is turned against dissent. Spaciousness becomes delay, delay becomes denial. Let's breathe with this is righteous when the breath clears the view. It is cruel when the breath fogs the window. And so the compassion that once pointed like open hands now points like a funnel, wide at the center, tight at the rim. Warmth is rationed in ever finer grades, old timer over newcomer, insider over neighbor, believer over citizen, loyalist over critic. If you're told you can't see this narrowing because it's impolite to notice differences, call that move by its name, polite cruelty. It refuses to look, then blames the seer for seeing. Every movement needs a camera. Nationalist piety discovered production value. Long shots of flag-line processions, drone passes over stupas at dusk, microphones catching a perfect bell tone as if the sky agreed. Clips are captioned with moral nouns and zero verbs. Honor, heritage, devotion. The absence of verbs is not accidental. Verbs imply responsibility. Nouns, lull. Underneath the poetry sits a distribution engine. Short videos for rage, mid-length for reassurance, long streams for parasocial proximity. The monkfluencer emerges as a genre, camera-ready, rhetorically smooth, trained to pivot from scripture to headlines without ever touching accountability. He blesses the nation in one breath and decries politics in the next. He quotes the Buddha to defend a checkpoint, then quotes a poet to scold a mother who asks where her son is. Aesthetics is doing the heaviest lifting. Saffron against marble, candles by night, children in white with flowers, iconographic steroids that make any policy look like a sacrament. Platforms reward predictable awe. The content calendar syncs with patriotic dates, memorial days, and flashpoints. Live streams are framed as prayers for peace that double as shows of force. Attendance becomes a referendum. Donations become a poll. Diaspora channels act as echo chambers. Longing becomes loyalty. Loyalty becomes lobbying. If anyone posts video of harm, it is smothered under a weighted blanket of clips where elders smile and doves fly. The feed edits reality into a liturgy. Here's the cynical elegance. Algorithms treat attention agnostically. They do not ask whether your tears are compassion or fear. They ask how long you stayed, Nationalist Buddhism has learned to index both emotions with the same footage. When outsiders suffer, the montage is cropped. When insiders grieve, the orchestra swells. The machine is not evil, it is blind. The blindness is expensive, and the bill is paid by those without cameras, whose pain lacks the grammar of awe. Behind the scenes is a production pipeline that would impress a startup. Wardrobe lists, drone batteries, talking point sheets, caption banks, emergency reputation rescue templates. There's a content cadence: minor feast, soft clip, major feast, cinematic piece, crisis, live prayer from the biggest hall with handheld tremble for rawness. There are asset packs, incense smoke overlays, slow motion petals, stock children releasing doves. Each has a proven engagement curve. Or is A/B tested? The parasocial Sangha is meticulously segmented. Elders get long, soothing sermons. Youth get punchy reels with beat drops under mantras. Diaspora get nostalgia pieces with grainy home footage cut against border footage. Donors get clean spreadsheets and glossy PDFs with large numbers and small print. Skeptics get preemptive content. A monk smiling with a microphone saying, "We welcome constructive criticism," then refusing every concrete question. Optics as omnidirectional shield. And do not underestimate reaction content. Opponents' statements are clipped, reframed, re-uploaded with reverent titles. Clarifying our position, the comments are curated. The first 20 pin the tone. Critiques are welcomed if they confirm the brand's superiority. The messy ones are starved of oxygen. Shadow banning wears a rosary. When calls for de-escalation finally appear, they arrive after the engagement harvest, when heat has already banked the week's metrics. Symbol kits are everywhere. Lion thrones on posters, lotus crowns on helmets, gilded edges on police shields, scripture fonts on municipal banners. This is semiotics as soft power. It makes refusal feel like sacrilege. It makes accountability feel like blasphemy. Who wants to ask for an invoice when a relic is in the frame? Who wants to talk permits when a child is bowing? Cameras are not neutral. They are priests that decide what you're allowed to feel while the cut happens somewhere else. When the machine sputters because reality leaks, there's a backup plan: overwhelm. Flood the feed with weddings, ordinations, charity runs. The algorithm learns that awe means don't ask questions. Viewers learn that discomfort means they've failed spiritually. It's neat, it's gentle, and it's perfectly engineered to keep you calm while someone else decides. Island Kingdom. A coastal shrine becomes campaign HQ. Politicians learn the choreography: kneel, press palms, donate roofs. Priests learn the optics: bless ribbons, sprinkle water, speak of purity in terms vague enough to trend. A riot flickers. TV calls it clashes. The morning paper defense. A decade later, the city has more statues than schools. The statues never miss payroll. The schools do. At funerals, eulogies expand nationality until the coffin looks like a map. Mountain Republic. Border villages are told they are the throat of the nation. Any cough is invasion. Monasteries stock grain for pilgrims, but the pilgrims wear boots. A sermon on discipline doubles as a lesson on demographics. Who should marry whom? How many children? What to boycott? A widow is praised for giving her son to service. The son is missing. The widow is given a seat in the front row, a shawl, and a microphone. She thanks the leaders. The room cries on cue, Frontier Monastery. Bandits rebrand as guardians. A charismatic abbot runs night patrols that never find crime, but always find audiences. Merch appears, bracelets with slogans, decals with swords, compassion with fangs, as a bumper sticker that forgets the sutra and keeps the teeth. Local businesses pay donations to avoid rumors. Outsiders stop visiting. Insiders stop asking. The abbot's sermons grow abstract when the police arrive. He speaks of rains and karma. The police leave with photos, not arrests. Across all three, the cash flow is steady. Patrons who crave absolution, pilgrims who crave pride, donors who crave proximity to power. Temples become hazard buffers for the state, absorbing criticism, radiating legitimacy. The few who object are taught the tone. Your words hurt unity. A cleverer version arrives. Both sides suffer. Symmetry is the shield of the strong. It halves every wound to make sure no one pays the full bill. River Delta megacity, pilgrimage routes become tourist corridors guarded by heritage volunteers with radios. Street vendors are told to align their carts for beauty and safety. Those who align sell incense, those who don't sell silence. A new museum opens with immaculate dioramas and an absent wing. In that missing wing live the names you are told would complicate the narrative. School trips conclude at the gift shop, where a portion of proceeds funds community harmony initiatives. Zoom into these scenes and you will find the same micromechanics. The permit that renews faster if the sticker goes on the window. The sermon that praises good businesses for serving the right crowds. The blessing ribbon cut in front of a clinic while the clinic's intake form quietly changes its questions. The lawyer who drafts a policy that protects feelings as if they were species under threat. Soft law, hard night. Walk a few blocks and you'll also find the disappointed practitioners who wanted a refuge and found a rally, scholars who wanted archives and found exhibits, teenagers who wanted teachers and found influencers. They stay anyway because belonging is a basic need, because leaving feels like treason, because dissent has been diagnosed as Western. The most talented learn to speak in a dialect that says everything without naming anyone. They grow old early. International cameras arrive. Diplomats pose with elders. NGOs post statements about dialogue. Nothing moves because the choreography is perfect. Condemn the cycle of violence. Praise ancient wisdom. Fund capacity building. Avoid nouns. Meanwhile, capacity is being built, just not for what the brochure implies. The crowd control is smoother, the rumor network faster, the skyline prettier on television nights. Why spend time in these field notes? Because specificity blows away denial. Once you can narrate the mechanics, the spell breaks. You stop arguing about whether Buddhism is peaceful or nationalism is evil and start describing screws, hinges, budgets, microphones. The myth prefers abstractions. Reality is components. Components can be unscrewed. The first cost is truth. When right speech is repurposed as harmony, facts become noise. Journalists are gently disinvited. Witnesses are emotional. Numbers are foreign. The second cost is practice. Monasteries become stage sets. Novices become props. Elders become brands. The schedule bends toward photo ops, chanting covers for curfews. The precepts are printed on banners and ignored in procurement. The third cost is women and minorities. They carry the heaviest contradictions, asked to symbolize purity while absorbing its punishments, asked to host festivals that celebrate their own erasure. The fourth cost is youth. Boys learn that ferocity is filial piety. Girls learn that silence is grace. Their internet serves them loops of smiling elders and footage of broken doors. The cognitive dissonance is logged as depression. The fifth cost is diaspora. Families split along algorithmic lines, uncle versus niece, aunt versus nephew, each convinced the other has been colonized by media. Holiday tables go quiet, group chats grow claws, remittances turn into political tithes. The sixth cost is economic misalignment. Budgets favor spectacle because spectacle trends. Roads and clinics wait their turn behind lanterns and amphitheaters. There's also the international bill, reputational debt. Diaspora kids who would have found home in the Dharma now find it in other traditions because they cannot stomach the smell of incense without seeing checkpoints. Universities cut programs quietly, pilgrims divert. The export brand Peaceful Wisdom becomes a punchline in rooms where policy happens. The people who still need help from those rooms pay for that joke in visa denials and smaller grants. Inside the monasteries, the cost shows up as talent bleed. The novices with difficult questions, future translators, future abbesses, future reformers go silent or go abroad. Those who stay learn politics first, Vinaya second, meditation never. A portion of donations shifts from books to barricades, from counseling time to escort duty, from community kitchens to stage lighting. The tradition becomes photogenic and hollow. A generation later, the relics remain. The nerve is gone. Economically, nationalist piety is a misallocation engine. Money flows to spectacle because spectacle measures well. Clinics close early while festival budgets grow. Flood barriers are blessed instead of built. Bridges are named instead of maintained. Merch expands, charms, bracelets, certification plaques for Dharma aligned business. Meanwhile, working people discover that loyalty discounts are a myth and that justice points aren't redeemable. The personal bill is worst. Ordinary citizens become amateur censors of their own hearts. They flinch before curiosity. They rehearse the right tears. They police their tongues at dinner. Private gentleness shrinks to protect public safety. After some years of this posture, the body forgets how to stand without performing. That is the creepiest cost. Posture as prison. The Dharma never asked for this. The nation never needed it. Someone did, and it wasn't the vulnerable. Run the audit. If a project demands your silence more often than your service, if it uses children as decoration and the poor as background, if turns prayer into posture and posture into proof, then the bill is already overdue. The balance will be collected, not by fate, but by the very neighbors whose names the camera crops to keep the picture neat. I promise no techniques. I will offer criteria, the kind that make capture expensive. First, non-alignment as a vow. Temples refuse endorsements, and candidates refuse photo ops on temple steps. When leaders show up with cameras, doors close, not because politics is dirty, but because the sacred cannot be rented by the hour. Second, governance before grandeur, budgets published, grievance channels independent, Audits boring and public. If it cannot survive boredom, it isn't Dharma, it's theatre. Third, pronoun discipline. Liturgies that refuse the possessive plural. May all beings means all. If a festival cannot sing for the neighbor who voted wrong, cancel the festival or tell the truth about it. It's a rally. Fourth, repair culture. Not forgiveness fetish, not apology porn. Repair. If harm occurs in saffron, saffron faces consequence. If a rumor spreads in the name of purity, the rumor is publicly retracted with names. Fifth, curriculum realism. Children learn that lineage includes failure, that heroes make repairs, that history has more than one camera angle. Sixth, diaspora hygiene. Communities abroad publish when they fund, they publish who decides, they publish what strings are attached. Remittances don't get to carry rifles. Seventh, media literacy as precept. We measure awe by outcomes, not cinematography. We track the ratio of tearjerker reels to actual relief. Eighth, frontline focus. The test of compassion is distance. Does help get cheaper the further from our map? If not, we are a club with incense. Ninth, anti-endorsement policy. Sacred spaces state publicly what they will never do. Endorse, platform, or launder any official. 10th, measurables. Communities report not sentiment, but outcomes. Court cases accompanied, shelters funded, rumors corrected, assaults prevented, families reunited. If the numbers bore you, good. Boredom is a sign of honesty. 11th, scriptural parity. For every reading that praises order, a reading that praises mercy across borders. For every tale of heroic defense, a tale of generous loss. 12th, rotation and sunset. Roles end. Clout decays on schedule. Titles expire unless refreshed by service, not applause. 13th, third space alliances. Temples partner horizontally with libraries, clinics, and labor halls, not just palaces and police. 14th, non-performative peace. De-escalation occurs off camera. If it must be filmed, the camera points at the harmed, not the hero. 15th, right to apostasy. Leaving is blessed, return is uncomplicated. Belonging is not a hostage situation. Is this idealistic? It is operational. Nationalist capture thrives on ambiguity and spectacle. The counter design thrives on paperwork and patience. If this bores you, ask what has been exciting you. The monks and nuns you admire most in history always traded glamour for grind. The lay people you admire most kept their hands dirty and their names small. There's a pattern worth loving. A civic dharma is not anti-nation. It is anti-idolatry. It refuses to place any identity above accountability, any relic above a child, any anthem above a vow. It will still sing and cook and grieve and celebrate, but it will not confuse a good chorus with a good constitution. And when the parade approaches the altar, it will do something both scandalous and beautiful. It will smile, bow, and close the gates. Here is the sentence I want inside your next crowd. Compassion has no homeland. It can choose a language, kitchen, lullaby, and still refuse the border. The moment it accepts a badge, it stops being medicine and starts being permission. I am not naive, I am unbribed. Nations exist Threats exist, grief is not a theory. But if the only way we can care is by shrinking the circle first, we have mistaken safety for supremacy with a soft voiceover. What will you get for listening this far? A filter you can carry to the next rally, stream, sermon, or cabinet meeting. Does the speech enlarge the field of beings who count, or does it tidy the field to flatter a camera? Do the holy words make the vulnerable more audible, or do they make the powerful more photogenic? When a monk speaks, ask who gets quieter. When a flag waves, ask who gets smaller. When a tear falls, ask whether policy moved an inch. If not, your awe has been embezzled. I'm not telling you to burn your flag or leave your temple. I'm asking you to watch for the moral embezzlement that happens whenever compassion becomes a team sport. There is nothing wrong with belonging. There is something wrong with belonging that makes someone else unbelievable by design. The Buddha didn't die for a country. He died of being human in a human body, in a human world that still needs help more than choreography. That is insultingly ordinary and impossibly demanding. You wanted a shortcut, a label that tells you when compassion is true. There isn't one. There is only follow through. After the speech, does the budget move? After the vigil, do the doors open? After the promise, do the harmed get power? If the answer is yes, keep your flag and your faith and your festivals. I will clap from the back. If the answer is no, I have no quarrel with your symbols. I have a quarrel with your substitutions. Symbol for service, purity for safety, pageantry for policy. Here is a small parable. A community builds a hospital wing and names it after mercy. The opening evening is gorgeous. Monks chant, leaders speak, cameras pan to donors. In the morning, the triage nurse is told to ask newcomers for papers the elders never needed. Mercy has a logo now. Admission has a filter. Within months, outcomes worsen, but the photos remain stunning. Was Mercy present? Yes, in vowels and violins. Mercy as verb never showed up. Nationalist piety is a factory for that bait and switch. I have been accused often of disrespecting tradition when I refuse its weaponization. The accusation is flattering. It means the speaker still believes tradition is so strong that it can be used for anything. I think the opposite. I think tradition is fragile when it is turned into a brand and impossible to kill when it remains a practice. Brands die of scandal, practices survive on correction. If you love Buddhism, you must love its ability to disappoint you into truth more than its ability to entertain you into loyalty. And now a dare. Next time the flag enters the frame with the Buddha, picture the Buddha stepping off the platform, taking the flag gently and hanging it outside the hall, where weather will have its say. Inside faces only the humankind, all directions. Outside colors, beautiful, temporary. If this image feels like betrayal, ask whom. If it feels like relief, breathe. The world does need defenders. It does not need sanctified audiences. Choose which you will be and measure your choice in harm reduced beyond your mirror, not in how holy you felt while watching the show. If you insist on a slogan to carry away, make it this: principles over pageants, neighbors over narratives, budgets over bells. I will not let a flag wear the Buddha like a mask. If your sermon needs a border to sound brave, it isn't courage, it's costume. Keep the incense, burn the excuses.